The webinar today is looking at artificial intelligence and water management. What are the opportunities? What's the effectiveness of artificial intelligence? What are the limitations? And of course, what are the ethics around using artificial intelligence in water management? This is the third series in our early webinar series here at RWSN. For those of you who don't know what RWSN is, or for short, that's short for Rural Water Supply Network, we are a global network of professionals and practitioners working to raise the standards of knowledge and evidence, technical and professional competency, practice and policy in rural water supply, so that we can fulfill the vision of sustainable rural water services for all. We are a massive network of professionals, close to, if not more than 10,000 from all over the world. And already we are seeing quite a number of people jumping on, about 200. We've already cleared 250 people. You're welcome from wherever you are to this webinar, the third in a series. As part of RWSN, we have quite a number of thematic groups that you can be a member of. We have groups on Leave No One Behind that looks at issues of equity and inclusion. We have self-supply, sustainable groundwater, sustainable services, multiple uses of water services, as well as this one, which is the Data for Action thematic group. And this webinar is for the data thematic group. But before, we used to be known as Mapping and Monitoring thematic group. But we changed the name because mapping and monitoring is good for getting data. But Data for Action is more focused on how can we use that data to actually make the decisions that we need to be making. So one of the things we're very interested in this particular group is to look at what tools exist to help us make decisions, to help fast track or accelerate decision making when it comes to using WASH data. And very clearly, artificial intelligence has become a tool that a lot of people are turning to actually help with making decisions. But to say that artificial intelligence is disruptive is an understatement. Wherever it has gone or has been used, artificial intelligence has disrupted. It is a truly disruptive technology. Whether it is in the education sector, where students are now using ChatGPT to write entire dissertations. I wish I had that when I was writing my dissertation for my master's degree. And now people are having to create artificial intelligence to read whether a dissertation was written by artificial intelligence. It's disrupted the education sector. But also, if you look at the health sector as another example, artificial intelligence is actually saving lives. It's been able to diagnose illnesses that humans would have otherwise not been able to detect. Wherever you look, artificial intelligence is actually making an impact, and it's really triggering a lot of discussion. The disruption is triggering a lot of discussion around raising questions about the balance between benefits and risks. That is what artificial intelligence is doing in so many sectors. What is it doing in the water sector? Then that is what we are going to look at today. And we have three presenters today that I'm extremely excited about, who are looking and using artificial intelligence in different ways and different avenues. We have Olivier Mills, who's from WASH AI. He even has AI in the title of his organization. We have Snehal Verma, who's doing some work with fish farmers from Nature Dots. And of course, we have Professor Kwaku Adjei from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. We'll give you a lot more of their profiles as we are going on. And of course, my colleague Mutala will be supporting me as we'll be going through this particular webinar. Once again, welcome to this webinar looking at artificial intelligence and water management. And the purpose of this webinar is to really look at how are people using artificial intelligence in water management currently? What are some of the opportunities? What are some of the successes? What are the challenges? And also, most importantly, what are the limitations and areas concerning ethics to do with artificial intelligence in water management? So these speakers will be sharing how they're using artificial intelligence individually, but also really digging into ethics. So this is the purpose of this particular webinar, to share examples where artificial intelligence is being used, but also to look at what are some of the lessons or considerations we need to take into account if we are looking to using artificial intelligence. So that is why we are here. Welcome once again to this webinar series for RWSN. And before we jumpstart, I know you're all excited to get started with the presentations and you want to hear what they have to say. And of course, I'm sure you have a lot of burning questions. As mentioned, you can put your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box, in the Q&A box. They're close together down there. And if you're just joining us, welcome. Put your name and your organization or the country you're from so we know which part of the world that you're from as proof that RWSN is truly a global organization. As mentioned, my name is Muti Hiema. I am team leader for an organization called Baseflow in Malawi, and I'm the co-lead for the RWSN Data for Action group. Before we jump into things, we are going to do a quick poll that is going to just understand what is the temperature like in the room concerning artificial intelligence. There are about 3 questions that we would like you to actually respond to. It's a simple, you just simply click the response that is more relevant to you. The first question, you need to scroll up to the top. So you see a scroll bar on the side, so scroll up or down. So the first question you need to answer is, for what purpose do you use artificial intelligence in your day-to-day work? For those from Francophone countries, the French translation is right next to it. So the first question is a multiple choice question because you might use artificial intelligence for different things. So you could use it for writing grants, brainstorming, summarizing, image generation, those of you who are into graphic design, search and research, learning, and of course, maybe some of you don't use artificial intelligence in your work. That is okay. Let us know how you are using artificial intelligence right now. That is the first question of the poll of this webinar. The second question, if you scroll down, is to what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? The statement is, the benefit of using artificial intelligence to enhance our work far outweighs the risks. I'll take that again. The benefits of using artificial intelligence to enhance our work far outweighs the risks. And for those from Francophone countries, the French translation is right next to that one. This question is single choice. You can only choose one. Do you strongly agree, disagree? Are you in between? Agree or strongly agree? So that's the second question. The third question is, to what extent do you agree with the following statement? There are enough regulations to aid in the responsible use of artificial intelligence. I'll take that again. There are enough regulations to aid in the responsible use of artificial intelligence. And this is a single-use question as well, a single-choice question as well. So you need to respond. We'll give you 45 seconds. Sorry, I'm being stingy. I'll give you 1 minute to respond to these 3 questions. So there's the first question, which is multiple choice. How are you using artificial intelligence? The second question is a single choice, responding to the statement, do the benefits of AI outweigh the risks? And the third one is, which is a single choice question, there are enough regulations to aid the responsible use of AI. I'll give you a minute to respond to those questions, and then hopefully we'll see what the responses are like. 1 minute, starting now. So, okay, we have over 331 people joining. This is exciting. If you're just joining us, there's a poll that you need to respond to. There are 3 questions. It should be right in front of you right now. There are 3 questions, a multiple choice question and 2 single choice questions. Make sure you scroll through to get to all the questions, and then we'll see what are the responses like in the room. Yeah, 330 people. Thank you. If you're just joining, put your name in the chat and the country you are from. Okay, we've got some responses right now, but and I think the poll is closed, if I'm not mistaken. I think the IT team will let me know. But let us look let us look at the responses. To what extent, let me go back to the top, sorry. For what purpose do you use artificial intelligence? Wow, it seems quite a few of you are using it for learning and also summarizing notes. And oh, wow, you're also using it for writing grants. You're going to put some of us out of work. I actually write grants. So yeah, so this looks like it seems like a lot of summarizing of notes in meetings, writing grants, and also learning. Very interesting. And also there's about 20% of you don't use artificial intelligence. Let's see if you start using it after this webinar. Now, do the benefits of artificial intelligence outweigh the risks? It seems that a lot of you, a majority, 38%, you say that it does, but most of you are neutral. And the last one, I think we'll come back to this webinar, this poll later, because we need to move on. The last one, there are enough regulations to aid the responsible use of artificial intelligence. Most of you disagree. Very few of you agree. Only 2% of you agree. A large majority of you, more than 50%, actually disagree. Let's see, as we go into the webinar, if your thoughts on this are either challenged or changed or confirmed. So thank you very much for responding to that poll. I think we'll come back to it a little later on. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the presenters of this webinar. I introduced them a little earlier. We have Olivier Mills, Snehal Verma, and Professor Kwaku Ajay. And we're going to have the presentations in that order. I will, at this time, introduce our first presenter. And our first presenter is Olivier Mills from Wash AI. Olivier fashions himself a problem solver, a web developer, an entrepreneur, and a wash specialist, and he's based in Canada. Like I said, we are global. He is the founder of Mills IT Consulting, Baobab Tech, and of course, Wash AI, which we'll be hearing about today, where he and his team develop solutions that use artificial intelligence to empower organizations. So that is our first speaker, Olivier Mills from Wash AI. So on that note, we start with his presentation. Thank you.
Hi, so I'm going to do a brief overview of what Wash AI is, where it came from, where it's going. The origin of Wash AI really is from observing current practices, both opportunities and challenges of really how we have and are still disseminating research, practical learning, and still struggling with in-context troubleshooting and interpreting information as well. So what we're seeing is still a lot of PDFs being made, a lot of websites being built, and not really knowing what the reach is. A lot of new online libraries and that kind of come and go within the last 30 years of the WASH sector. We're seeing a lot of documents or frameworks being produced, and the challenge is really to put it in context of the WASH practitioner who's reading this technical paper or this new approach. Also, we're seeing language challenges where we might have something available in French, English, and Spanish, and not necessarily in my local language, Arabic or Urdu, Swahili, Hindi. So there's a language barrier there as well in information dissemination. We don't know who's using these manuals. We don't really know how useful it was to them. And I think one of the biggest and hardest one is we don't really know, we don't get much feedback. We don't know, like, this is my experience in trying to do this approach, or in this technical challenge of using technical information in the WASH sector at any level, from policy to really practical technical components. So these are the things that motivated the development of Wash AI in the context of using new available large language models to process information. So the question we asked ourselves was, how do we get the most relevant information in the hands of those who need it now, so that they can understand and interact with it? That's the challenge, really, that Wash AI is trying to address. So when we think of those who need it, we're thinking of, well, what's the local context? How does this information apply to the local context? How do we make sure it's up to date in context of the person who's using the information. Relevant, how is an information relevant? Well, it's got to be targeted to the person who's using it. Is this person a policy developer, writer? Is this a technician at the, working within a very, very technical context? Now, as in, we recognize the volume of information that's out there, and we can't all read everything that's being published. So how can we simplify it, really focus on the most relevant information now, and then they can spend their time, instead of searching, they can spend their time actually digging into the topic. Understanding is critical for information. So what language is available? How can we change the language? How can we immediately translate it using machine translation? How can we simplify complex topics? How can we provide some of the background knowledge so that they can understand something that's more technical? And finally, the interaction, the most exciting part, I would argue, is how do we enable information to be dynamic, and so that someone could look into a topic and decide to dig in deeper on a technical perspective, or to broaden it and say, well, okay, great, show me other examples in this other country. So that's some of the approaches that we're taking with Wash AI, and we can do a lot, if not all of this, with the new advances in large language models. So what is Wash AI? Wash AI is really a suite of services. It includes a web-based knowledge assistant, kind of like a chat bot, if you will. It includes a WhatsApp connector, so we can interact with that same base of knowledge through WhatsApp. We're building a Learn module, which allows us to explore a topic a little bit more, instead of just question and answer, but we kind of dig into a particular topic in the WASH sector. TLDR is the too long didn't read, so that's the summarizing tool that helps simplify and summarize long reports, publications. Pulse is a newsletter that is published every week, AI generated. Now, it's based on updates that are gathered every week, up to about 300 updates. And those updates from various organizations and social media are summarized and presented in a newsletter. The Data Explorer module is one where we are connecting our knowledge systems with large data sets, such as the JMP, the World Bank data sets, and all open data sets that are relevant to the WASH sector, so that you can interact with them through simple questions, rather than trying to download the CSV files and trying to generate graphs and go through complex dashboards. And finally, the Translate system, which is we're building to enable WASH language, so WASH terminology translation in common languages that are used in our sector. So the web interface, as you can see here through the screenshot, is one of the first tools and services from Wash AI. And really, it's the idea behind it is you ask a question and it accesses its very large knowledge base of curated WASH documentation and updates from the sector, and provides with a best guess answer. In this case, we are building out more than just a question answer approach, but this shows you sort of its simplest form and how it differs from something like ChatGPT is that it provides references to its answers. And so you can trace back to, okay, well, it said something like, where does this information come from? And the demonstration here in this image is showing an answer that pulled from the recent WHO guidelines and the specific page in which it found it. So the WhatsApp connector is a big one. We know how many of you are on WhatsApp and are already using that as a tool to connect with colleagues. And so we wanted to give an opportunity for you to engage directly with Wash AI's knowledge base via WhatsApp. Again, providing that same transparency around the references in which the information was found. So Wash AI has been opened in beta, which means sort of testing. So it's not fully public yet. And that's very important. We want to make sure the tool is reliable. We have already 450 WASH practitioners signed up from 81 countries and have a few 100 active testers who have asked over 1,400 questions. What is really interesting is that tools like these give us the opportunity to understand what is being asked in the sector, the themes, and also who is asking these questions. What is very important for us as well is transparency around data privacy. And so when we do these analyses, we anonymize completely the data of the user, and we're really just looking at the people's role and also the topic of the question that might be asked to make sure that there is full privacy around the data. So interestingly, we have a really, really broad mix of user bases across the WASH sector, from anything from executives to WASH managers at the subnational level, WASH researchers, as well as funders. The topics are also all over the place, which is quite interesting. And this is a AI categorized topic of the questions that have been asked. And so we can see there's a majority of them in the water quality, actually, which is, I guess, not surprising in terms of the nature of the types of questions that are being asked. So where are we going with WASH AI? Our main focus is actually to look at a more localized focus and dig into the local perspective. So being able to segment our knowledge base and provide more contextualized answers for, at this case, the country level. And so that, for example, if someone is asking about examples of applications of a technology, or could be asking about policy information or guidelines around how to do, for example, rural water supply, that we're able to dig right in and focus on the country that they're most interested in, rather than providing more generalized, not necessarily transferable information. So that's the direction we're going. We're building these services actively, and if you're interested, you can join in to test it out and help us build this very broad AI-powered knowledge system for the WASH sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Olivier. So at this point, we'll be looking to hear from our next speaker, who I'll introduce to you shortly. We have online Sanel Verma. She is the founder, director of Nature Dots, and has over 8 years of distinguished experience across India and the US, both very big markets. Preceding her work with Nature Dots, she drove impactful ideas in renewable energy, nature resource management, and technology. She's a first-generation entrepreneur, and she excels in ideating solutions for global water challenges, fueled by a passion for marine and freshwater ecosystems, specializing in the convergence of technology, nature, and finance. She holds a computer of science degree, an MBA from the IIFM India, and is a Fulbright Fellow with a master's in environmental management from the Duke University of the United States of America. Welcome, Sanel, and over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Madala. Hello, everyone. Thank you for that kind introduction. So I think now I would like to bring everybody's attention a little more towards how water and food systems are very closely linked, which we all know. But I want to draw your attention to one critical food area, which basically led to creation of our solution Aquanut, but at the same time starting of Nature Dots, which is freshwater fisheries. So the session is all about water, but how water impacts us, not just from a WASH perspective, but also from a food security or protein security. So something that my team and I have been working diligently across, looking at what's happening in freshwater fisheries and how climate change and water nexus works together. Let me share a small data point, but a big data point, that in last 6 months, all across the globe, specifically in emerging market, we have clocked almost 34 million tons of freshwater fisheries being lost. And this all has been due to climate change impact, deteriorating water quality, but at the same time, a lot of multitude of factors. Why we want to talk about more from freshwater fisheries perspective and link it with water, because maintaining a freshwater fisheries, something that's super critical is to ensure that our water ecosystems are well managed. I want to give a small snapshot of what these freshwater ponds look like. It's not just big, large reservoirs, but at the same time, these are small ponds which are always nestled between agricultural fields or community ponds. And so I'll tell you a short story as to something that we found was that when we started working with freshwater fish farmers to increase their productivity and at the same time de-risk them from a lot of other stressors, something that we didn't factor in is on how quickly the water environment changes. Many of our fish farmers, when we initially started working, started documenting these small mortality incidences whenever there was a runoff or a rainfall event. And when we started finding out what was it that was changing in the water that the fish stock could have been lost in within 2 to 3 hours, we found there was absolutely no pond or water data available for us to triangulate or even do any diagnostics. We figured that this was a very critical gap, but then why was this gap still there? But before I jump in, I also want to bring your attention to the three main precursors, which are not only risking the freshwater fisheries and a protein security for a huge chunk of population, but at the same time endangering our water ecosystem. That's the disease outbreak, incidences of low dissolved oxygen, and harmful algal blooms. And this all sort of, and these are multi-dimensional problem. And what we found was that the existing solutions that were available both for a water resource management and for freshwater fisheries have been looking at water from a very siloed perspective. So water, unlike land, does not have boundaries or a border. It's going to flow. And this is a brief snapshot of what a land waterscape would look like, where you can see a large reservoir upstream and you have small, tiny tank ponds. Now, this was something that challenged us because we were looking at water resource management from, say, a pond level management or a reservoir management. But to think that this system is entirely connected, we figured that we have to look at the resource from a more totalitarian perspective or look at it more from a systems approach. And when you have to zoom it out to a systems approach, you look into the kind of data points that one would need. And the current system, such as statistical methods, seems sort of very bulky and at the same time complicated. So the key thing that we had to work on was to how do we first get this data, because we knew that there were already existing water quality monitoring stations and other that have been available, but why has it not upscaled to other parts of the world? This is a case of India, where we found we had very less water data available. And the reason was that the current systems were expensive. They were sort of looking at water from a siloed perspective or needed a lot of learning curve and calibration. And on the fisheries side, we had absolutely no information available for freshwater fisheries. So to rethink about this, as we started building up a solution, plugging in one data stream at a point, and now we have ended up plugging in almost 10 million data points. What we ended up creating was a digital twin of a water body, where we not only capture the pulse of water from the surface of the water body, but also from what's happening inside the water. Something which is crucial for water resource management is that we look at water from how the ecosystem dynamics are changing. And a unique perspective that we developed here was to integrate an ecological lens, which would help de-risk water, not just from a fisheries production or water resource, but integrate both of these perspectives together. And we also realized that the key barrier was the use of hardware. And this is where the role of AI has been transformative, because now by using the AI systems which we developed in-house at NatureDots, we are able to reduce the requirement for an IoT sensor-based monitoring by almost 50 to 80% and have achieved accuracy of 99.5% in many critical water quality parameters. This led to a change where we created a high-end technology, but made it affordable and accessible to even the most vulnerable section, which could really make use of this hyper-intelligence data to tackle the hyper-local risks which are happening. And so we started working with fish farmers, and for fish farmers, the solution is something that they're able to use in a very human-centric approach, because we co-created this with them. all the analytics and insights on what's changing in their water body, how their fish growth is happening, what inputs are required. All this information is made very easily available to them through a mobile app, which is available in 13 local languages in India. And we are now testing it in further other geographies, including in Southeast Asia and some parts in Latin America. So they were able to earn almost 3x to 5x return on their investment. And with the better production, we were able to have they were able to get more better market prices. Something that we did find that was the most innovative, that as we had more data and information on water health, on fisheries health, on weather and climate, we were able to identify the incidences for fish disease outbreak. Recently, in last couple of years, we have seen outbreaks such as tilapia lake virus diseases, parasitic infections, which now we're able to focus beforehand. And as with AI, we're able to detect what are the conditions that lead to this disease outbreak. And giving these alerts and advisories help fish farmers de-risk themselves. But when you work on a system solution, tackling the pain point of water, the same solution can end up having multiple applications. Here are two use cases, one in India and one in US, where the same Aquanurse digital twin were used by water utilities in India to de-risk a drinking water reservoir, which supply drinking water to almost 6 million people, and by identifying non-point and point sources of pollution. And in the US, restoration managers were able to use the same system for increasing the restoration efficiency. With the more data and information, by combining different ecological, biophysical, and chemical data points on water, they had more targeted insight as to how to target the resources and how to capture these problems. But working with communities, the key things is that we have to we have to build an ecosystem, and partnerships and collaborations are super important, because they are not only data provider, but at the same time, they're also data users. And we had to build up a system which is accountable and transparent for our fish farmers and other users directly benefiting for such a solution. Since last 3 years, while working with freshwater fish farmers and different utilities, we've been able to save almost 630 million liters of fresh water and are now on target to restore almost 750 billion liters. We're a small yet growing startup team with almost 8 members, including my 2 co-founders, Atish and Ayush. And currently, with this small team, we are looking for more collaborations and partners to deploy the system and get more evidences and data and sort of present how a systemic solution working at a resource could really lead to transformative changes, whether it's for people, planet, or businesses, and have a dream to capture health of almost 10 million hectares. Thank you so much, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Snehal. That was Snehal Varma presenting on the work that they're doing at Nature Dots. Already, we have seen 2 examples of how AI is being used in different contexts in water. With Olivier, we saw an example of how AI is helping to sift through volumes and volumes of data and documents and PDFs to actually give us information right on our phone through WhatsApp. In the presentation we've seen how artificial intelligence is helping integrate or bring together multiple data points on water and fisheries to bring efficiencies and restoration to biodiversity. I think the figure I saw in Snehal's presentation was 10 million data points per hectare per year. That's a lot of data points, and AI is helping sift through that and integrate it to help with targeted decision-making in multiple contexts. So already we're seeing some interesting examples of how AI has been used. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please put your questions in the Q&A box, not in the chat, in the Q&A box. And for those who are from Francophone countries, bonjour, bienvenue. You are very welcome. If you'd like the French translation of this webinar, there should be an interpretation button just down in the toolbar below, and you'll hear this webinar in French. Our next presenter and last presenter is Professor Kwaku Aje. He's an associate professor from the university, from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He's an associate professor of civil engineering. He earned his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the university, an MSc in hydrogeology and water resources from UNESCO IHE in Netherlands, and his PhD from the University Hohai University in China. His work focuses on sustainable water resources management, flood risk management, and has significantly impacted civil engineering education and practice in Ghana and beyond. We've come from Canada, India, now we're in Ghana, and this time we're going to look at the ethical considerations of artificial intelligence in water management. Over to you, Professor Aje.
Good day to everyone. For today's webinar, following what the other speakers have already presented, I would be focusing on the ethical considerations as we implement AI in water management. My name is Kwaku Ameni Aje. I am at the Department of Civil Engineering at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Kumasi, Ghana. So for today, I will give you an introduction, then would look at the ethical considerations, and then I would conclude. So water scarcity is a pressing global challenge, and our planet's freshwater resource, as we all know, is finite, while demand continues to rise due to population growth, urbanization, and industrial development. Climate change has further intensified the issues with erratic rainfall patterns and rising temperatures. And these factors necessitate innovative solutions that we need to be able to manage our water resources effectively, since the traditional water management methods are often inefficient and unable to meet the growing challenges. And so AI presents an innovative solution which can help us improve our water management practices and come up with sustainable utilization approaches. And so for this presentation, I will be focusing on these key ethical considerations as we implement AI in the management of our water: data privacy, bias, accountability, transparency, job displacement, and finally, regulation. And so when we consider data privacy, the data collected for AI systems in water management can be quite sensitive. For example, in a city implementing AI-powered smart water meters, the data collected from households may include water usage patterns, location data, and even personal and socio-economic information. And as such, strong data privacy measures are essential to protect user privacy and also build trust in these systems. And so what are some of the things that we can do? One of the things that we can do is to have secure data storage and access control. User data should be stored securely, and access should be restricted to authorized persons only. Nobody wants to see his water users on the internet and for people to be able to predict how he baths, when he baths, and when he does not bath. Again, user consent is also a key issue. We do not want to take data from users when they have not given their consent. And so users should be clearly informed about what data is being collected, how it will be used, and who will have access to it. And we should also give them the opportunity to consent or to opt out of the data collection properties. And lastly, we should give users the right to have access and delete their personal data as and when they require. So the second point that we would want to look at when we are looking at ethics is bias. Bias in AI can lead to unequal resource distribution. For example, an AI system designed to allocate water resources in a water distribution network must ensure it does not favor affluent areas over poorer communities. It is crucial to develop and train AI models on diverse data sets to prevent reinforcing existing disparities. We all know there is more data available in the global north than in the global south. And so it's easy to train models based on data in the global north, leaving out the differences and peculiarities in the global south. And as such, we must ensure that algorithm bias, which can arise from training data which reflects existing societal inequalities, do not come about by focusing on data only from the global north. What can we do? One of the things we can do is to conduct bias audits, including diverse data sets. No matter what, we should make efforts to get data from the global south so that our models are not biased. And we must also continuously monitor the AI decisions for fairness. The third point we would want to look at is accountability. Accountability is a crucial aspect of ensuring responsible use of AI in water management. The question arises, who is responsible for the decision AI systems make? I'm sure that has come to your mind before. For example, in the case of a flood prediction and response system powered by an AI, clear protocols must be established regarding who is responsible for action taken based on the AI predictions. If a wrong prediction leads to inadequate responses, who should be held responsible? In this case, there are several stakeholders who may share accountability, including the developers of the AI system. They are responsible for ensuring that the system is designed and trained in a fair and unbiased manner. So if there's an inaccurate prediction, they may be held responsible. The entities deploying the AI system, they are responsible for using the system in a responsible way and for mitigating any potential risks, as well as the regulatory bodies. They have a role to play in setting standards for accountability and ensuring that AI systems are used in compliance with those systems. So what can we do in this case? To ensure accountability, one, clear lines of accountability are essential for building trust in AI systems. And so we must have human oversight for key decisions. For critical decisions, there should be a human oversight to ensure that the AI system's recommendations are fair and reasonable. The fourth point we would want to look at is transparency. Transparency involves making the workings of AI systems understandable and accessible to all stakeholders. This builds trust and ensures that decisions made by AI systems can be scrutinized and validated. Consider an AI system being used for monitoring water quality. Such a system should provide clear and understandable reports that are accessible to key stakeholders. The assessment algorithms, as well as the criteria used by the system, should be transparent to ensure public trust. What can be done when it comes to transparency? One, we should ensure that there are clear and transparent communication about AI decision-making processes. This will ensure that people impacted by AI systems have a clear understanding of how these systems work and how they arrive at decisions. The point which is on everybody's mind, job displacement. Is AI coming to take my job? Yes, AI can lead to job displacement, but it also has the potential to create new employment opportunities. While AI offers significant benefits for water management, it is important to acknowledge that it may also lead to job displacement. AI has the potential to automate many tasks currently performed by human workers in the water sector, such as meter reading, data analysis, and routine maintenance. This automation could lead to job losses in some areas. While job displacement is a potential concern, there are strategies we can adopt to mitigate its impact. One is upskilling and reskilling programs, which can equip workers with the skills needed for new jobs that emerge in the AI-powered sector. Again, we can have job redesign, which would involve redefining existing job to leverage on human and AI capabilities collaboratively. This may involve on focusing on areas where human judgment, creativity, and social skills are irreplaceable. That is why we're saying responsible use of AI. And so the two can live hand in hand. The last are regulations. And regulations are key. As AI technology continues to develop, it is important to develop regulatory frameworks to guide responsible development and deployment. These frameworks, such as the EU AI Act, can help to ensure that AI systems are safe, fair, and transparent. And countries, especially in the global south, must take keen interest in developing policies on the use of AI. For example, regulations could require that AI systems be tested for bias before they are deployed. They could also require that companies that develop AI systems have clear plans on how they will address potential risks. Regulatory frameworks are still evolving, and typical projects like the Real Project at Kenya USA are working on frameworks on the use of responsible AI. But they are important steps towards ensuring that AI is used for the good of all. To conclude, AI offers a promising future for water management. However, it is crucial to address the ethical considerations outlined in this presentation to ensure that AI is used responsibly. By working together, stakeholders from government, industry, developers, and civil societies can develop and deploy AI systems that are fair, transparent, and accountable. This will allow us to harness the power of AI to create a more sustainable water future for all. A balanced approach to technology, governance, and inclusivity is essential. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Prof. That's a very good presentation. And our concerns and the issues that we have been thinking about has to be addressed. We all have a role to play. The ethical issues are real. If we don't put in place policies and guidelines to guide how AI revolution is going to look like in the future, people can use it for the wrong reasons, and it can affect all of us negatively. As much as we think about the good, let's think about the extent to which it can be a negative tool for some sectors of our economy. At this point, we need to follow up based on the presentations that have been made. We've heard from our 3 speakers, and at this point, we'll try as much as possible to make it interactive, to give people the opportunity to ask questions beyond what they have in the Q&A box. But before we do that, I have a question for Olivier. Olivier, your presentation was quite apt, but just to follow up with this, given the challenge of hidden biases in large data sets, how does WASH AI that you are leading plan to address these biases to ensure the shared knowledge remains trustworthy? Thank you. Over to you, Olivier.
Yeah, thank you. That's probably one of the biggest questions that we're hearing these days within the use of generative AI and language models. I think the key distinction we need to make is the distinction between the models themselves, the foundation models, and the AI systems in which the models are built, which are built around specific language models. And so because there's a lot of popularity and a big hype around generative AI, we're mixing a little bit the difference between the language model itself, the foundational model, like ChatGPT's model, GPT-4o or whatever it is, and all the others that are out there. Separating the two, there's a difference between the pure model itself and the system that we build. And so with WASH AI is an AI system. It's relying actually on multiple different kinds of models that we put together, that we weave together. We use language models to look back on existing answers, to autocorrect. One important distinction is also to avoid sort of hallucinations and bias is to not use the model for the knowledge in which it's trained, but use it to be able to compose the answer. And there's a big distinction. So we inject known information from reliable sources, and we make sure the model uses that information. So there's various techniques to do that, and we can significantly mitigate both bias and hallucination, because in some ways, even the fanciest of models are very influenceable. You can tell it what to say. You can influence it significantly, and we do that intentionally, so that we make sure it relies purely on the information provided, rather than whatever it's been trained on in terms of its original training data. The bias that is definitely there in the training data. So our approach is multiple in how to avoid these biases, but mostly relying on curating the source of information as its source of knowledge.
Thank you very much, Olivier. Because we want other people to get a bite, I wouldn't follow up. I know people would have some concerns around this response, but I'll hand over to Mitri to take it from there. Thank you.
Yes, actually, one of the things I found very interesting in Olivier's response was the fact that you can tell the AI what to say. Once upon a time, I used an AI, I'll not mention which one. It said I don't exist, which was very interesting. He said, "Oh, sorry, you don't exist." So it was very interesting to find that actually I'm not actually here. So it's actually very interesting what you can do with AI. I'm going to ask another question, and thank you, Olivier, for your response. I'm going to ask a question to Snehal, looking at her presentation, which looked at taking all of this fishery data, water data, and bringing it together and overlaying it. I think you talked a lot about breaking the silos and trying to bring data from all these different sectors to actually make more targeted decisions. I found that very interesting, particularly the figure of 10 million data points per hectare per year. It's like, my goodness, that's astounding. And but I'm really interested in the interface you had, because you did talk a lot. You did to speak to the issue of interfacing with the farmers, with the fish farmers that you're working with. I wanted to get a sense. What was their initial reaction to using this system, this AI-supported system? What was their reaction? Did you get a sense of any kind of pushback or resistance? What was their reaction when you introduced the system to them?
No, thank you so much, Mati. And I want to sort of add on to here. The reason for us to build on Aquanergy and integrate so many data points was that we already knew the traditional, wouldn't say traditional, but the way that we were already managing the fisheries with enough water data, like just looking at water data, we knew that was already creating problem. So we wanted to sort of bring an ecosystem or a water ecosystem-based approach. But to do that, we had to capture the pulse of it. That means we had to look at weather data, climate data, water data, fisheries data. For fish farmers, they don't want to get overwhelmed with so much data and information.
Yeah.
So initially, and this is how the system helped. It crunched all this, but gave them targeted information as to what are those critical 3, 4, 5 things that, you know, that could be transformative for them. Is it, and it's not that they don't understand the water. They did new basic elements such as pH and dissolved oxygen and temperature. But even in those fish farmers who never knew it, the system sort of enabled them to accept it. Something which we did as a basis, which helped us overcome the barrier, was that while developing the solution, we worked with fish farmers. We worked with to understand what is the UI UX that they would be working. What are the conditions in which they will be using this app? Because if you're in Sun and if you have a mobile app and you can't see what's written, it's going to serve no purpose. So very small points we had to incorporate while we were building the solution, keeping them in focus. And eventually, once they started interacting, then they started using more AI aspects. We haven't integrated large language models as of yet, but now we are slowly moving towards giving them more information through that interface. So the reception has been transformative, and where we have learned from them, because there were a lot of information that the sensors cannot capture, that satellites cannot capture, that you can't get. You get those information from fish farmers. So that also acts as an input. Yeah.
Oh, okay. my mother, I often like to tell my mother, can I ask you a stupid question? And my mother says, that is if you want a stupid answer. So I'm going to ask her just a stupid question. Is there such a thing as too much data for your system to process? Is there such a thing? Is there such a thing as there comes a threshold where you have so much data that the risk of error increases? Is there such a threshold?
Something which professor also pointed out, biases can creep in, so we need to have always checks and balances. But also for some problem statement on situation, you don't need to process 10 million data points. That's the potential of a system that it can do. So you can always create an AI solution which can work in combination. So for example, when you end up creating a digital twin, a fish farmer may not need hundreds of pain point or risk that the system is capable, but only tell what are the key ones that are required. But from a same water body, a utility manager may need another water risk, but they're both interconnected. So for water specifically, I still say we don't have enough data. We don't have enough information specifically for Global South. And for any AI systems to develop at a general scale, we need more data from different parts in the world. So we are still looking at a huge data deficit and data gap. So I will save myself from saying that we have too much data. We don't. For Global South specifically, we need more information.
Oh, I thought I would get you to say that's too much data. Thank you for your responses, Nahel. So over to you, Mutala, to ask the next question.
Thank you, Muti. Hello, Prof. Your presentation really touched on the issues of regulations. And when we look at the AI revolution, you can see that the global north, especially the European Union, is trying to do something around that. I know the Ministry of Communication for Ghana is trying to develop some framework around AI usage. And you in the academia, I'm just hoping and wishing that with the kind of knowledge and understanding you have, they will probably be reaching out to you for some inputs. But just a follow-up question to your presentation. Considering the ethical challenges of AI that is going to be introduced in the use of AI for global water management, what systematic challenges will organizations, governments, and other stakeholders face? And how can they position themselves to navigate these changes effectively, or these challenges effectively?
Yeah, thank you very much. Surely in KNUST, there is a project currently being sponsored by IDRC, and it's called RAIL Project, which is looking at responsible use of AI, and they are coming up with frameworks which can help in the responsible use of AI worldwide. But to your question, some of the challenges, like I mentioned in the presentation, is data governance and privacy, both at the national level and also at the organizational level. And what we can do is for us to implement a robust data governance framework and strict privacy policies so that we manage who is able to have access to what. In the question, somebody asked about smart meters. Smart meters are not AI systems, but they are enablers because they help in the continuous gathering of data, which is very important. But when you get at the data, we must have strict privacy policies in place. And we also have to look at accountability and transparency, like I said. We need to establish clear rules nationally and then in the organization so that nobody will say, but the computer did it, but the system did it. If the system did it, you were given some oversight. And so you are responsible to ensure that what the system is giving out is the correct thing. It's just like having an autopilot. If you're in a car, current systems, you are supposed to sit so that if there's an emergency, you quickly react. In the same way, we must come up with accountability and transparency and then establish clear rules, giving oversight body, and also ensure that we have transparent AI decisions. Then we must also work with there will be some regulatory and ethical standards challenges. You know, in the global south, we are most often late in sometimes adopting these technologies and sometimes do not even have the resources to do this. And so it is key that we collaborate internationally so that in some cases we can leapfrog, because there are some countries which have already advanced in coming up with regulations and ethical standards. And so we can leapfrog and have collaborate among these government, organization, academia, so that we can create and update our regulatory frameworks and ethical standards frequently and be able to match up with what is happening in the global north and other places. Then also in implementing these systems, we must do continuous monitoring and evaluation, especially in the global south, because there are some systems that we implement, we see that it's not working well for us. And because of that, we need to quickly change. If you do not monitor, you will not know what is happening. We may assume everything is going on well. The last but not the least is education and capacity building. We must consciously invest in our programs, educational institutions, so that they do funding. You know, in the global south, very little is spent on R&D. In this AI age, we can't take that for granted. We must invest in these institutions so that we can develop appropriate technology which will respond to our needs. There are some of our local languages that if we don't invest in ourselves, nobody will invest in it, and our local communities will continue to be further marginalized in the use of these technologies. I think this will do for now.
Thank you very much, Prof. So for we those from the global south, we need to be deliberate. We need to advocate. We need to push our governments to be able to respond to the AI revolution. At this point, I think we need to give the opportunity to a few people who would want to ask some questions. But before then, Muti, if you have anything to say.
No. Just thank you to our speakers for responding to those initial questions. And right now, we're opening it up to people who've been putting their questions in the Q&A. So please put your questions down in the Q&A. The presenters are already responding to some questions in the Q&A. So please put your questions there. If you need the French translation, there's the interpretation button down below. I think I'll take the first question, Mutala. We have a question from James, who is asking, and I think, of course, he's put this to the panel. He says, we shouldn't be producing 500-page guidance documents in the internet age. How does the panel see the future of sharing evidence and learning in the WASH sector? So that is the question. We shouldn't be producing 500-page Q&A, or to borrow from what Olivier said, too long, didn't read. How does the panel see the future of sharing evidence and learning in the WASH sector in the light of AI? So I think, I don't know who wants to take that question first. Maybe Olivier, because it's more aligned to what you are presenting, and then we'll see if the Prof or Snehal have a comment. So over to you, Olivier. Should we be writing 500-page guidance notes?
I think we need to see a shift in knowledge management and knowledge dissemination, information dissemination, because we need to be able to now leverage the ability of AI to take information and transform it, contextualize it, make it more useful to the person who's reading it versus just reading it as it was written. I think if people, honestly, if writers did a better job writing for their audience, I think that would be good. But the problem is when you write something so generic, it doesn't make sense to practitioners who are looking for a specific application. The risk of summarizing, and I'm not a big fan of too long didn't read, because does that mean that we never actually dig in? And I think we can shift that. What I'd like to see is, leveraging AI to capture our attention around a topic, and then we can really dig into the knowledge. So I don't think we should see it as an oversimplification, but actually as a way to expand and go at the pace and the understanding of considering our background knowledge. So I don't know if the answer is not to do 500 pages, but I think it's writing, knowing that you'll have AI tools who's going to transform what you've written to make it applicable to reader A, reader B, and reader C, who speak 3 different languages and work at 3 different levels within the water sector. So I think it's how we write things and writing it in a way and producing content in a way that AI can work with it. That's my take. But wait a week and something else is going to come out.
Okay.
Yeah, you never know with technology. Over to you, Mutala.
Yes, there's a question directly to WASH AI. How will WASH AI costs look like in the near future for users in terms of cost, since you are yet to roll it out fully?
Yeah, that's absolutely something we're looking at. The difference of AI or large language model applications is, for these language models, they have a cost to run them, right? Which is different when you write a program, scaling costs hardly anything. Going from 1,000 users to 100,000 wouldn't make a big difference with it. With longer language models, it does. So we are continuously evaluating the language models that we're using in the back end of the system. And we're doing cost projections on like, okay, what does it look like for 10,000 users a month? What does it look like for 50,000 users a month? The huge advantage is that the cost is going down. Like just in the last 3 weeks, the main large language models, they're twice as fast and they're half the price. So we are seeing actually a really rapid decrease in costs. And I'm speaking to financial costs. One thing we haven't talked about is there is a huge environmental and water cost to the use of AI. So I do want to flag that as a true cost to humanity in using AI. But in terms of the financial costs, we will be able to provide Wash AI for free as a free tier for all users once we go live. That's something we're keeping an eye on.
Okay, good to know.
Actually, I would like to just comment on that. I'm glad you brought up the subject of the water footprint for AI. I think we did get a question from someone on LinkedIn who actually asked that question, and maybe I could throw it to all of you. There is a water footprint to AI. It consumes a lot of water, which is kind of the irony. Here we are, we're talking about AI and water management, but AI is having an impact on water. How do we deal with that caveat or that trade-off? Is it something we just have to live with, or are there initiatives in place trying to rectify that particular problem about the water footprint of AI? Anyone can take that question.
I am happy to give my 2 cents
Okay.
here. Thank you so much, Muti, for bringing that up, because this is something that before we started developing the product, we very well understood. So now when you're building an AI product, there are not just AI, like AI, the whole deep tech ecosystem. There are systems such as green machine learning models, green machine learning approaches, or framework of product development in AI, where you optimize and put efficient resource allocation so that your overall footprint decreases. Yes, there are inevitable costs, because cost of running huge data centers or supercomputers is going to be there. But we need to eventually come as to what kind of product we're developing. And the role of AI is to now help us look at interconnections, specifically in water. Where earlier we had simple statistical based models, but now we have more data and more different machine learning models. And it is supposed to generate new insights and completely shake up the way we are looking at water sector. So something which Olivier mentioned, like we would eventually want to bring certain aspects of giving this information to all the users, because water is a human right, and we all should have enough information on our fingertips to be made available. So it'll not only disrupt the way we are looking at resource, like how AI will enable that, but at the same time, it will bring the transformative changes in governance and policy perspective, something which even Professor mentioned, that we need to think it beforehand, then develop, and keep those checks and balances in place. Yeah.
Okay. So there are initiatives, and it is a cost that we actually need to be honest about, right? Because it, like I said, it would be ironic that we are water professionals using AI, but we're having an impact on the environment as well. So it's good to hear that there's some initiatives. I don't know if Prof, especially from an ethical standpoint, I don't know if you have anything to add to that question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the ethical issues that even in my research, it came up, that the use of water. But, you know, one of the things is like the way we have been using cars. When we started using cars in the beginning, they were not very fuel efficient. But along the line, hybrid cars have been introduced, and then we move into electric cars, even though people have their concerns. In the same way, the use of water by these data centers has become a concern. And increasingly, we see these big institutions who own these centers, Amazon, Microsoft, and the like, trying to find more sustainable and efficient ways of managing these systems. And like one of the panelists said, they are also looking at using green infrastructure for it. And I think that these are issues which have come up, and those who own these huge data centers are working on it, and will make progress in the use of sustainable systems in cooling these data centers, so that we don't have to be chasing water after we've gotten used to AI.
Okay,
Great.
thank you. Over to you, Mutala.
Yes. So from my end, I'm thinking, can we give some of our participants the opportunity to just raise their hand and ask a question directly to any of our panelists if they are available. Just raise your hand. We identify 1 or 2 people to directly ask a question to our resource persons. So you have the opportunity to do that. Just raise your hand. But most of the questions have been responded to directly in the Q&A session. Yes.
Maybe while we're waiting for someone to raise their hand, there's an interesting question here. I'll throw it to the panel. It's more of a general question. It's from, it's been translated from French. It's from Haruna Abachi. It's a bit long, but I'll skim through it. It says, we work mainly on pastoral hydraulics. In this sector, there's often no drinking water, surface water, large diameter wells, and so on. Technology is lacking. We work in the Central Sahel, particularly in Niger, in pastoral areas, far removed from various decision-making centers. For this reason, pastoral hydraulics is the poor relation of all hydraulics. Wells are very deep, over 100 meters, and rare. How can we talk about artificial intelligence when there are not enough water points? How can we talk about artificial intelligence in this context of Niger when there are not enough water points? Maybe digging into this, is there maybe an issue of that maybe we need to take things one step at a time in different contexts before we leap to this technology? Throwing it to the panel. Anyone can take it.
Prof wants to.
One of the things I have been working on is how to use satellite rainfall to help in hydrological modeling in Ghana, and for that matter, in areas where you have very little meteo stations, but you need to do model which requires a lot of data. AI presents the opportunity to see how I can do my hydraulic modeling with very little data. Okay. And some of the studies where some have used, like one of my students tried to see if we can do a rainfall runoff model with AI, where you have very little data compared to where you are using a traditional hydraulic physical-based models. And the results were encouraging and good. And so AI presents an opportunity to test out how I can do this pastoral modeling with limited data and how AI can observe some of these trends and make these presentations. So I think it's an opportunity to see how I can use my limited data to give to have a fair understanding of the existing situation than it seeking me further to the bottom. That's what I think.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. I think, Sahel, you wanted to say something. Yes.
No, I just wanted to add on to what Professor said. India, we have, I would say, desert of data. We don't have data. So, and that is why we had to end up using AI, what Professor mentioned. Like, there are so many hydraulic or hydrological and geological models which need a lot of data. But with AI now, you could create these proxy indicators or virtual sensors which we develop, which can really help bridge this gap and give targeted insights.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. We still have quite a few questions here, and I can't really choose which one.
Okay, let me give this out.
Yeah, go ahead.
From Takele. It says, who is responsible for leading AI in wash sector in countries? As it has been said, it requires a lot of groundworks before starting it. So also around the issue of regulation and who we must hold responsible.
I mean, I can speak to monitoring a little bit what I've seen around the generative AI. I think it is an issue. It was surprising actually to see that people felt that there was enough regulation. You would say that running a startup, I would say that I don't want regulation, but I think we really need a lot more regulation and smarter regulation. I think we saw the EU is very, very good at jumping in on regulation. Really, surprisingly, usually the EU is very slow, the European Union, but they were one of the fastest to jump on this. I think we need a lot, but I think we can do a lot because we know that's going to be slow. We can do a lot within our sector to provide digital literacy and understanding at the human, like at the individual level, at the organizational level, building capabilities of individuals working with AI, so that we don't have to wait for regulation to make sure that we are doing it responsibly and ethically, that we understand the models we're using, we understand the limitations and the risks of using data with AI. So I think in some ways we can't wait for regulation because this is moving so fast, and we know how long policy takes to get written. So I would argue we need to kind of stay ahead of that, and that would be my push, is to really, anyone who's working any closely to, is really push their management to say like, hey, we need training on this, we need to understand how it works, I want to be using this ethically and responsibly. So in some ways we do need to come up with our own internal policies before we wait for the government level policies.
And this kind of speaks to what the prof was talking about a little earlier about, the systemic changes that organizations actually need to have in place, the issues with data privacy and so on, so that we can sort of position ourselves for this wave that is coming, because whether we like it or not, it is here. It's not coming, it is here. So how then do we position ourselves for that? I think, Prof, you had a question. I think you wanted to also add to that particular question about who should lead on AI regulation
in the watch sector.
Okay.
In the watch sector.
I think like Olivier said, we must have the regulations, but you see the use of AI is not one thing we pick and we put it and everybody taps. It's broad. Currently, if Watch AI is launched, people will start using it. Who do you hold responsible? So the international body is the one that will be regulating Watch AI. Currently, ChatGPT is being used. Is it being regulated in Ghana? So it is a broad area. So you can't pinpoint one organization to lead the regulation of AI. It is an international collaboration that we must have to ensure that all aspects of AI can be regulated. The nation must have theirs, and then the international body. Once they work together, then together we know that we are regulating how we use these tools. So there is no one body who can regulate the use of AI in the work sector. It is a collective effort, both nationally and then internationally. And then, like Olivier said, plus the moral responsibility of the developers themselves to ensure that what we are putting out is right and fit for purpose.
Thank you very much. Yes, so this session has been very good enough. I hand over to Muti. Thank you.
Thank you, Mutala, and thank you to our speakers. There's just one quick question. I want a simple 2-second response. There's a question here which I think is still really interesting. What is the water footprint for Watch AI and Aquanotch? Have you calculated that? Do you have the numbers?
I don't have the number yet, but that's a really good question, because we actually are now finally, someone has been pushing, actually from Canada, has been pushing a lot of the foundation models to publish the actual energy use and footprint of these models. So you're able then to calculate really like, okay, if I'm using, let's say, GPT or Gemini or whatever these models are, we're able to then calculate based on how many tokens we use with the language. So we're waiting for that data to come, and then we'll be able to publish at least the energy use. The water use is a bit harder because it depends on the data center, but yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Snehal, very quickly. Yes. Do you have that number yet?
No, we're still calculating. But yes, we will soon be releasing a study with those numbers.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. We've come to the end of the Q&A. I wish we could keep on going, because some of the stuff you talked about really touched on stuff I wanted to dig into. And I know that our audiences who are watching, listening from all over the world might have had a lot of questions. But to those who are still on, the 274 people who are still here, thank you. Merci beaucoup. These speakers are available on LinkedIn and other platforms. Snehal is with Nature Dots, and Olivier is with Watch AI, and Prof. Ajay is with the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Check them out on LinkedIn or any other platform, and keep the conversation going afterwards. Very quickly, I wanted to know, if you wanted to give one final thing for people to take away from what you have brought today, what would be that final thing? I'm giving you 30 seconds each. I'll start with Professor Adjei. What is the one thing you'd want people to take away from this session today or from your presentation on ethics? Over to you. Oh, you need to unmic yourself.
Prof, you are muted.
Sorry. What I would want people to take away, especially our government in the global south, is they should take active steps to ensure that they come up with good policies on data governance and privacy, because we are using AI, whether they bring it or not. Thank you.
Whether they like it or not. Thank you. And Olivier, over to you. What is the major takeaway from your presentation or from this session you'd want audiences to take back with them?
I think for me, it's really encouraging people to experiment and see what the technology can do and cannot do for them. Be extremely curious, but also very, very critical. Like really, I always say, like, switch on your analytical brain anytime there's some AI behind you or you're asking a question. Just turn on that super analytical, critical brain, because it's going to sound fantastic, but don't trust it.
So use your critical brain. So the human being is still needed, as mentioned a little earlier. Snehal, final words from you.
Yeah. No, I think this panel was an amazing session, because I think during this panel, we brainstormed so much, and I could see in the chat, people were coming up with great ideas on how we can potentially use AI. So I think we need more such spaces, and we need like more conversations, definitely from Global South, and where actual AI could be used for making ground impacts, specifically in wash and water sector. So it can be super transformative.
Thank you very much. Keep the conversation going. AI is something that is here and it's got a lot of potential. We still need to figure out how we can use it to maximize, to make it truly transformative. Mutala, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I think that moving forward, we should be able to create a lot of opportunity for some of these discussions. And we see that there's so much interest when it comes to AI. So we'll keep the discussion going beyond this session, and then we look forward to future ones that will bring us together again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mutala. Thank you, Olivier. Thank you, Snehal. And thank you, Professor Adjei, for your presentation and sharing your insights. At this point, we've got about 4 minutes to close. But before we leave, to the 253 people here, I want to share a very quick story. The University of Oxford has actually, in January of this year, used artificial intelligence to try to solve a specific problem. And that problem was looking at how to create the perfect railroad system so that no trains crash into each other. So January of this year, the University of Oxford was using artificial intelligence to solve that particular problem, creating a perfect rail system where trains would not crash. The response from the AI was, trains shouldn't move, then they won't crash into each other. It sounds like a joke, but it's actually true. You can look it up on Google. The University of Oxford created an AI to solve this problem, and they say the solution is simple: trains shouldn't move. So AI has a lot of potential, but it still has a few clues. And the professor who was working on it, actually in the University of Oxford, even said, this technology has a lot of potential. It just needs to be worked on here and there. So AI, as mentioned, is something that's here to stay. We need to regulate it. We need to have oversight over it. And once with that in place, we can have transformative change in the areas that we're looking at, especially in water. You've seen an example of how it's being used to sift through a lot of documents, some of which we don't ever read. We jump to the conclusions or the executive summaries. We've seen how AI has been used to actually solve the problem of having multiple data points, to bring them together so that we break the problem of silos when it comes to data. We've seen areas concerning ethics that we must be considerate of as we are dealing with AI. And like Mutala, my colleague, said, let's keep the conversation going. The speakers are on LinkedIn. You can get in touch with them to see. And just to let you know, I'm not just talking. I'm one of the people who is testing Wash AI to see, is it really that good? So on that note, my name is Muti Kiema. I'm the team leader for Baseflow, but also the co-lead for the RWSN Data for Action thematic group. Thank you for joining this webinar. Like I said, this is the third in a series of webinars. We have 2 more that are coming up. For those of you who are interested, we have one on self-supply, which is looking at supported self-supply case studies from 4 continents. We also have Stop the Rot, which is looking at improving groundwater supply through hand pumps, which is looking at the quality challenge, ensuring a high standard of rural water supply infrastructure from the onset. We've already had a few other webinars already. If you're interested, we had one last week on incontinence and another one by the Stop the Rot as well, looking at rapid corrosion of water infrastructure. If you would like to join any of these groups, we have these multiple groups you can be a part of. Like I mentioned in the beginning, Data for Action is the group that I'm a member of together with Mutala, but we have quite a few groups, Leave No One Behind, Sustainable Groundwater, Sustainable Services, Multiple Uses of Water Services. Please join. If you look in the chat, Batima, the IT team have posted the link to where you can join the Data for Action group, where you'll find me and Mutala waiting for you to continue the conversations. On that note, I want to say thank you, and I hope this has opened your mind to the potential of artificial intelligence and also the risks and the ethical areas required. But still, though there's risk, there's opportunity. I wish you all the best, and wherever you are, good afternoon, good evening, and good night from RWSN Data for Action Group. Thank you very much. Register below in case you want to join our thematic group or any other thematic group with RWSN. Thank you very much. Stay safe.